What's going on, YouTube Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Zero Tolerance 0456 Sinkovich design. This is not my knife, this is Jake's knife. If you've been watching my channel here recently, you'll know that my friend Jake from Instagram, that's at Jake's Knives, generously offered up a whole bunch of his own knives for review on my channel. So thank you again, Jake. This has been on my radar for a long time. I've had it many times in a checkout cart and just couldn't quite pull the trigger. So I'm really thankful to finally get it in hand here. Let's go ahead and do some measurements here. Overall length of the 0456 is about 7.75 inches. From tip to scale, you're looking at about 3.6, 3.7 inches. The actual cutting edge is probably about 3.4 inches, 3.3 to 3.4 inches. So not a bad cutting edge for the total length of the knife there. Let's do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Delica? Spyderco Delica coming in at 7 inches overall. So you can see there, this is a lot of people are aware of this knife by now. I'm late to the game here, as is becoming a common saying on this channel. But I don't know if you guys noticed, I don't necessarily always review the newest knives. I review knives that I'm interested in, whether I've had my hands on them before or not. I like to review these types of knives because I think it translates well. You guys can tell that I'm enthusiastic about stuff. So if a knife interests me and it happens to be a brand new model, then great. But in this case, this is a knife that's been around for a long time, and it's not new, and it may not get a ton of views, but I don't really care because I just like talking about knives that I'm interested in, Sorry, sidetrack. If you are brand new to my channel, what I like to do are knife reviews, knife overviews. I don't take myself super seriously. I like to do unboxings, I like to do battles of popular models, and I like to do weird top 5, top 10 stuff on the weekends. So if you're a knife enthusiast, knife collector, knife user, a knife person of any sort, and you like the idea of this channel and you like regular uploads, this might be the channel for you. So feel free to subscribe. Anyways, I'm not sure exactly why I never pulled the trigger on this knife. I'm a big fan of big, thick, chunky knives. And this this definitely fits the bill. This is a big dude, and I don't know if you guys can tell in hand, but up against the Benchmade Griptilian, which is a longer knife, I mean, you can kind of see what when people talk about it being a little tank, it definitely is a little tank, and I mean more of a little tank than the Spyderco Techno, the Techno and Techno 2. I thought both of those knives were very tanky. The 0456 Sinkovich is definitely a tank. Let's go ahead and weigh it here so I can emphasize that. As usual, before we weigh it, give you an example of the action. This is a typical ZT knife. Now, Jake has informed me that all of the knives that he has sent to me have been used. I believe that he's carried and kind of cut a few things with this, but this is pretty new. This is a pretty good example of a ZT that's fairly new. Maybe it's been carried a little bit, but it's kind of a typical action for ZT. It's running on bearings. This one doesn't feel like it's quite broken in yet, but it's pretty easy to get it to kind of shake shut. I imagine over time it will absolutely fall shut, as is the case with most zero tolerances. This has a nice medium to medium heavy detent with an excellent flipper tab in terms of the shape. So action is nothing short of consistent ZT excellence there. People who own ZTs know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, weight on this guy, drum roll, 6.31 ounces. That is no surprise to me. 6.31 ounces. This is a thick knife. You're looking at what looks like probably, oh boy. So the blade stock thickness is definitely like ZT's, kind of their, I don't want to call it their standard thickness, but it seems like they've got a lot of knives that are about 155 thousandths thick. At least a lot of their Hinder collaborations are 155 thousandths thick. But it looks like the titanium is also about 155 thousandths thick, and it is not milled on the inside. I don't know if we can actually get in there because the backspacer's causing, well, it's making it hard to see. But you're just going to have to take my word for it. They're not milled out. They're solid. Now, I actually really like a solid knife. So this is not a problem for me. I've actually been carrying this knife all day today. Now, I'm not, Jake has generously lent me these knives. I'm not like, I'm going to go test this out on a tree. I'm not doing that. I carry it. I work in an office, and I've cut a little bit of paper with it. We'll get to that. But I don't have an issue carrying this knife. I wear jeans every day, most of the time. Sometimes I wear khakis. I wouldn't say this is a dressy khaki knife, but if you wear jeans, yeah, no problem. I really like carrying knives between 4.5 and 6.5 ounces, roughly. And I like a good feeling of solidity, which is why I like a, kind of a solid knife. Now, I used to be super into like mega chunky knives, and I'll admit, I would love to get my hands on a Crusader forge of any caliber, or a Direware, or a Praetorian tie, which is, I often say I'm stuck in 2013, where those knives were very prominent. But I like, for novelty reasons, I like knives like that. But the remnants of enjoying stuff like that kind of comes out in my joy for stuff like this. It's thick and it's heavy, but it's not too thick and too heavy for it to be considered practical. So I really appreciate the solidity that I feel in this knife. And oftentimes, a feeling of solidity and heft can help it can help dull that hammer blow of paying a lot of money for a knife. This is that's an applicable situation here. Listen to me trying to sound all cool using these big words. No, but seriously, I mean, it's weird how we do that sometimes. We equate heft and solidity to the justification for the cost, or it creates a false sense of appropriate price, I guess. When in reality, a lot of times, some of the most expensive knives have like crazy weight reduction, but people are generally on one side of the fence or the other there. That's a very long-winded way of saying this knife, if I had purchased it for the $260 you will pay for this knife, the weight would make me feel good about that purchase. Now, that's all besides the point, because that doesn't have anything to do with function. I guess we had a cloud go by. The color suddenly changed in the video. Sorry. Anyways, let's talk about the materials and blade shape and stuff like that. So the blade shape here is a sheep's foot that's got a whole bunch of angles that kind of come down. It's not like perfectly rounded, and what that creates for is a very interesting upper swedge. It kind of has a blocky appearance, but then again at the same time, it has a really smooth appearance. In a weird way, this kind of looks like a crazy exotic car. A lot of really hyper exotic cars nowadays have a lot of really sharp angles in some places, and then in other places they're very nicely rounded off, and it's that combination that creates the striking features. Now, this isn't necessarily a super new knife. A fantastic example of a very new knife that was designed by Sienkiewicz, I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not always right. The Spyderco Drunken, I think, was a Sienkiewicz design. You can kind of see Sienkiewicz in his style. It's very apparent. It's kind of an S shape, and I mean, like, you can kind of see the curvature there. That you see that a lot in his designs, and in some designs in some knives it's more prominent than others. But that's definitely the case here. I think he really likes the sheep's foot style blade. I do too. I think the sheep's foot blade is a very useful utilitarian blade shape. You still have a tip, but it's reinforced by a sharp drop, which means there is a lot of material reinforcing the tip, not necessarily just in thickness, but in the height of the blade. Down here, there's a lot of steel backing up this tip. So you really don't have to worry nearly as much about the tip breaking versus, say, a tip like the one on the PM2, I'm giving a good example here. You see what I'm talking about? There's a lot more steel reinforcing that tip, both in thickness and, sorry, I'm working against the camera, and in the height of the steel behind the tip. So that's really nice. On top of that, this does not look like a knife at first glance that would slice super duper well. But let me tell you, and I kind of thought, it's probably going to cut okay. This knife slices incredibly well. I was very pleased. Jake, if you're watching this video, then, how this knife slices, but man, does this thing slice through paper, no problem. I imagine it'll glide through just about anything. I mean, look at this. The curvature of the blade, first off, yeah, it's thick, but in terms of how much room it has to drop towards the cutting edge, it's got quite a ways. The belly starts immediately, which is the nature of a lot of Sinkovich's knives. It has that immediate curvature to the blade, and it continues all the way out to the tip. But just the entire thing is just a slicing machine. There's nothing in the way of the cutting path. There's no thumb studs on this knife. It's just the flipper. By the way, this is a satin finished CPM 20 CV blade. So you do have excellent, an excellent blade steel backing that up. Really, really great. The blade is just awesome. There's no complaints whatsoever with the blade. Moving down to the handle, you have very thick 6AL4V titanium scales with a little bit of nice machining. You can see the milling in there. It's nice. You see that on a lot of ZT knives. It's kind of a bead blasted frame. You have this very crazy looking blue anodized pivot. Now I don't know. I feel like that's a titanium pivot. I kind of feel like it's unnecessary and kind of crazy. Some people like that. We're going to talk about all the blue on this knife, definitely. I could have done without it, but I'm very biased towards monochromatic knives. I say that all the time. I like monochromatic knives, so I could do without that pivot. A plain satin finished or even black, typical ZT likes to do black up against titanium. I'd have taken that, but it's fine. The only problem with it really from a functional standpoint is you can see gunk gets trapped down in those cutouts, and I wouldn't say it's a problem functionally. It's just annoying. You have to, if you really want to clean it out, you got to like unscrew it and then clean it out, put it back in. So I don't know. It's weird looking and it's going to attract the gunk. Other than that, there's nothing wrong with it. Moving down here to the scales, you have, for whatever reason, these little teeny tiny Torx heads. I talk about these all the time. I hate those. And ZT never uses these, especially on an overbuilt knife such as the 0456. Yeah, this is definitely an overbuilt knife, or what I would call an overbuilt knife. So I don't know why they decided to use these little tiny screws. It's not that big of a deal. They still function. I don't like them because they strip out easily, and they mess up the teeny tiny Torx bits on my Torx drivers easily, and I don't really like it. There's a nice size lanyard hole. You can definitely get some 550 paracord through there. This, to my knowledge, is an aluminum backspacer, blue aluminum backspacer that matches the pivot. Again, I could have done with black or just a monochromatic gray, just like the rest of the knife, but that's just me. Flipping it over to the other side, you'll see the pocket clip is, again, that color, and you have those little tiny screws on the pocket clip, which is honestly where they belong. I can understand using the little tiny screws on the pocket clip because you don't have a lot of space, and that's generally, the smaller Torx bit sizes generally generally correlate with a smaller head size, so it makes more sense with the pocket clip. By the way, the pocket clip can be mounted for a tip-up right or left-handed carry position, though it is a right-handed frame lock, so lefties just be aware of that. For people who like tip-down carry, sorry, that's not an option here. In my opinion, on a flipper, tip-up carry is the way to go anyway, given the position of the flipper tab and where it would be if you were carrying it this way. It's just not that safe. And it's as unlikely as it is, you might be more likely to have it deploy in your pocket if the flipper tab was up against the rear seam. Anyways, the other side here, what's nice about it is it does have that hex side to the female end, so you know for sure that there's not going to be a free spinning issue with the pivot if you do have to take it apart. We do have a lock bar stabilizer slash lock bar insert, so you can see here the knife is locking up at about 35%, which is pretty typical for ZT, and it does come, or this particular one is centered despite being used by Jake, so that's great. Here's something that I definitely don't like, and it is just bizarre on a zero tolerance. The screw goes all the way through, this little tiny screw goes all the way through into the titanium. Now, it's fine if it's going to stay in place, but if you ever have to take the knife apart, Nick Shabazz has talked about this. If you strip a screw out that is screwing into the standoff, you either need to replace the screw or the standoff. No big deal. If you strip out the threads on the titanium, this entire side is messed up. You know, that's not easy to go. I mean, for ZT to have to go back in and re-drill that or possibly have to replace the titanium side, that really creates an issue with the warranty. And I don't like, I mean, it also creates a bigger problem, you know, from the user standpoint, because it's a lot easier to just ask ZT, hey, can you send these parts? And usually ZT will just send you the parts. Whereas if you strip out the threads in the frame, well, you definitely have to send the knife back. And whether or not it's even covered is another question. I have no idea. That's weird. Why did ZT do that? They haven't done that for a long time on any of their other models. So I don't like that. I used to not think that it was a problem, but until I was made aware of the potential issue with the stripping out of the threads on the titanium, you know, I guess I didn't really comprehend how big of a potential issue it was, you know. But I mean, it's fine if you never ever plan on taking the knife apart, but most people are gonna buy a knife like this, you know. Well, I have to assume at some point we'll use it, you know. So I don't know. It's just weird. Maybe it's more weird than anything else, but I would have preferred that they just had more screws on the other side screwing into the backspacer, I guess. You know, it just would make more sense. Or maybe a hole in the backspacer and it's got kind of a hidden standoff that they screw into. I don't know. But that's about all my complaints with the hardware. Most of that's nitpicky. It's really the screws screwing into the frame that I have a problem with. Let's talk about ergonomics. Ergonomically, this is a great shape. I mean, it kind of fits the curvature of my hand. Pocket clip creates kind of a hot spot. I kind of wish it was a different pocket clip. It doesn't, you know, they had an opportunity here to create a really cool pocket clip that kind of went with the design of the knife, and then it's like, it's just a regular blue ZT pocket clip. The pocket clip works fine. It carries well. About this much of the knife is sticking up out of your pocket, which is no big deal. Not deep carry, but not shallow carry either. I can feel it. I wouldn't call it a crazy hotspot. It might start to bother you if you're going to cut all day, every day. Not a big deal. But as far as where your thumb's going to go on this knife, a little bit of jimping would have been nice, but it's not totally necessary. All the corners and edges have been rounded off nicely, so it's very comfortable. Initially, I wanted to call this a 3-finger position knife because of the ramp right here. 3 fingers here, 1 finger back here. Honestly, I would really like this knife a lot more ergonomically if this part right here did not come to a point. If it was just shaved off. And I don't know if it's for some benefit holding it in reverse or if there's some benefit back here with, I don't know. Me personally, now I'm not an ergonomic professional, so you don't have to listen to me. Personally, just imagine the knife with me here real quick, just like this. Let me get it like that. You know, the handle just kind of coming like this and maybe bring this more flat. Yeah, it would be a more basic, more common handle, but I would just really, really like it a lot more because then I could get all 4 fingers comfortably around it. They'd all feel like they're roughly in the same position. I wouldn't have this pinky kind of falling off here on this back ramp. It's the only thing that bothers me about this knife ergonomically. Other than that, you know, it's no big deal. Truthfully, this knife is excellent. The one thing that really bothers me, and it's the one thing that has really bothered me with a lot of knives lately, and it's the price. I could have sworn, and maybe I'm wrong, I could have sworn that this knife was less expensive maybe a year and a half ago. I looked the price up on this thing, and it says that it's $260, which is also the price of the ZT-0562CF. And I know for a fact that thing used to be $240. So I feel like this one was a little less expensive. Now, to pull the reins back here, we do have a US-made titanium frame lock running on bearings, and it's full titanium. That's an expensive build. But it's kind of a kick in the crotch when, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember this thing being $240. So I'm in this awkward position where it's like, is it a bad price? Is it a justified price? I don't know. Everything could always be cheaper. I've said this a million times. You could say anything, you know, yeah, it's okay, but I mean, I'd like it a lot more if it was $20, $40 less. You could say that about anything. Yeah, truthfully, this feels like a $220 to $240 knife to me as far as what I'm used to seeing. But it's weird. It's like all of a sudden for a while we had a lot of really nice Chinese titanium knives that were S35EN or M390 running between $170 and $200, and now all of a sudden we're seeing the same builds from these Chinese companies ranging between $200 and $240. So instead of ZT keeping their prices the same for competition and backing off, it's weird. It's like all these American companies are seeing this as an opportunity to justify hiking their prices. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually what's happening or if that's not what's happening. It bothers me. I don't want to stray from the point here, because the truth is that I'm still going to recommend this knife. Having carried this and played with it for a while, experienced its slicing abilities, and I really enjoy this. I enjoy the blade shape. I think it's a very functional blade shape. I enjoy the feeling of solidity and heft. If I could change the pivot to something smaller and more simple, something that wouldn't trap gunk, if I could change the screws out and make it to where it was screws on both sides and not going all the way through, if I could get the pocket clip to be a different shape and a different color, if I could get rid of the blue altogether and do something more monochromatic, I would. But I can't really say that any design choices on this knife hinder you that much in a functional way. Yes, I would like this knife to be less expensive. Is it still something I can recommend at $260? Yes, it's painful. It's like, God, why is it $260? But it's still an awesome knife, and I truthfully enjoy this knife a lot. It's just fun. It's fun to hold, and it's kind of this. It's an odd, clunky shape, but when you hold it, you're like, oh, this makes sense. It's fun to carry, and it's also been really fun to show off to my coworkers. All my coworkers think this thing is neat, and the blade shape is just cool, and it looks good with ZT's satin belt finish. So this is a great knife. Oh yeah, did I mention it has another little feature that I really like? When they shoulder the tang of the blade that meets the stop pin, creates for excess surface contact, which should decrease wear on the lock bar over time. So that's pretty cool. I like that. It's a very solid knife. The build quality is excellent. Fit and finish is excellent. Very functional. It's sure to keep its owner happy for a very long time. So yes, I can absolutely recommend this. It will go on my playlist. But that's pretty much all I can say about this knife today, guys. So as always, let me wipe this off. I've had these fingerprints on this knife the whole episode. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you at least found it entertaining. If you did, of course, please leave a like. And if you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So please check that stuff out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel, because there is definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.